report. But then area on aging, it should just say no report. And then under that, I would recommend it say, Lonnie recommended contacting Cammie Edison for Vision Zero at a future meeting type of thing. But it's kind of all put together, and it shouldn't be. Boulder County Agency on Aging should just say no report.
Okay.
And then the next thing could be recommended contacting Cammie for Vision Zero. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. You got that? Okay. Any other corrections? If not, someone make a motion to approve the minutes. John, second. Art. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. All right. Public invited to be heard. Is there anybody here that wishes to be heard? Of course not. We want to hear from the public, so we'll move on to old business. I apologize for putting you off a little bit, but I think it's important that we hear the first item on the agenda. And so I'll ask Christina to go ahead with item A.
Sure. And Ronnie, please add anything that I might miss. So at our last meeting, I think there were some questions that I needed to follow up on with our city attorney and our finance department as far as two things. One, the donation resources by advisory board members. And then the second piece of things, I checked in with finance and our city attorney's office on both, and they had some follow-up questions for me, and Ronnie and I have been in a couple of meetings. We were given the Charter 7.1, which talks about city boards and commissions need to be advisory in character. And so having advisory boards out getting donations, those kinds of things, that really clashes with our charter. And as far as the municipal code around powers and duties, I think there was some concerns about the food drive or food hub really not aligning with that. And so the example that was given to us really talked about how friends boards work with advisory boards. That the role of this board is really to be at that 30,000-foot view, looking at policy, making policy recommendations to council, and then council sets that policy direction for staff. Like I said, what our city attorney talked about was how other organizations do this. For example, at the library, they have a friends organization that is the nonprofit that really does that kind of activity or project, like the book club. They have a book sale that they have. And that really isn't the advisory board's capacity to do that. So that was pointed out. As far as having advisory boards have our tax exempt form, that isn't something that would be recommended or would be allowable by the city. Anything that I missed?
Just that clear distinction, making sure that we're separating the advisory board is separating from program. Program projects, as you mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that we're staying away from some of those responsibilities that loop in planning. Creates or identifies roles and responsibilities with the staff to support that project, and clearly stated being more of that advisory, making those recommendations to city council to support that work, and then from there being able to identify the staff role or responsibilities. So making sure we're going through that process.
The piece that I shared with John as I was kind of working through all of this was some of the some of the work or some of the connections that our council makes at the National League of Cities. I think, I shared some information with John on that website, and they have a food security effort within National League of Cities, and where I thought would be helpful for this board to really look at is with the data that you've collected, with the people that you've talked with in the community. I think that presentation could be made to council to say, we have gathered all of this data. We would encourage you, council, as you attend the National League of Cities, to really connect into that track of the conference, because I think that what that could do is then give them the information not only from the community, but what's happening at a national level. And should they choose, then they can come back and with our city manager give some policy direction to then, our city manager would operationalize that by directing staff to and providing those resources to make sure that we would move that forward. And so that's kind of how it looks in my mind, kind of at that 30,000-foot view. And that's kind of what I had shared with John. So, any questions?
Lonnie?
Does that mean, would it be possible for the Friends to look into doing some food distribution?
So the Friends as a body could decide that they wanted to fund that. I would also say, however, the same kind of caveat that we talked about in this meeting, as far as the utilization of staff resources to make that happen. I think that that needs to be really looked at. I think the other piece that we have discovered is that there are other organizations that do this. And do this quite well. So the Hour Center, Community Food Share, and what we would really want to be mindful of is that mission creep. And so is it really the Friends of Senior Services role, I would ask, to provide that, or is there a partnership that would be better served with one of our existing nonprofit organizations that the city already funds? To do some of this work. So that's a question that I would ask. But it is in their purview to decide how they want to spend those funds.
Now, we as volunteers could volunteer to help anybody, right? We could help.
It would need to be a partner.
All right.
Would need to be totally apart from your role as an advisory board member. Yep.
Okay.
So you would do it as a volunteer.
As a volunteer, not as an advisory. Yeah, just to keep that distinction really clear.
I said I was going to contact the Child and Youth Organization and ask them if they're still giving out food, but I didn't. Mm-hmm. What would you recommend be the best way to do that? Just give them a call and ask them if they're still doing food distribution?
Yeah, and I don't know if Ronnie has had the chance to work with Hilda. Part of what, and I think I mentioned this maybe last meeting before, we had our department retreat. And in that department retreat, we really broke up into work group teams. And so we had people from Children, Youth, and Families, people from Senior Services working together on a team to develop goals to move forward in 2025. And so I think that food piece probably landed with our after-school recreation program, and I don't have that information yet, what they're wanting to look at for 2025 and beyond. But I think a good connection would be Ronnie and Hilda to kind of talk about that, because I don't know what meetings they have had with their team members.
I just feel like there are refrigerators out there that are available by Longmont Food Rescue. Yes. And I'd love to utilize them,
right.
And maybe Lashley is one of the places that could have one, or other places in the city.
Right, and they do have a refrigerator. When I was at the youth center, We did get food from Longmont Food Rescue. I don't know where
They don't
that
have
was.
they don't have one of our refrigerators. There's a refrigerator
There's a
inside the
refrig-
youth center
Uh-huh.
for, like, run by the youth center
Right,
staff.
Right,
Yes,
but
yes.
we used to have food from Longmont Food Rescue when Kyle was there.
Yeah,
We would get sandwiches, we would get all kinds of things from Longmont Food Rescue. Then I think what happened, there was a dip in participation after COVID. I think now they're probably to the point where they may need that resource, but that really is a staff programmatic call. Like, I wouldn't make that call for Hilda and team. They would really need to be the ones to look at that and then reach out to Naomi if that is appropriate.
And we do bring some food to the youth
Okay,
center
to
still.
Yep.
To Giselle, and we have discussed a fridge potentially, like a partnership there, like for a community fridge. It just needs to, like you said, have a discussion with Hilda and some other folks there.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect example of how to support. So there's an organization that already does this, and so how can we bolster what they're doing? How can we do the same with the Hour Center? Is it, do they need volunteers from, friends or advisory board to serve meals? Like, how do they do that? I know back in the day, people used to go in and cook meals. I don't know what the setup is with Hour Center now.
Right.
But those would be the kind of questions that I would ask. What's already in place that we can contribute to?
Then let me ask this just occurred to me. As a group, could we go one day and cook lunch at the Hour Center? Do you know how they bring in groups to take care of the lunch for the day? Could we
Not
do that?
as a senior center advisory board. Again, you're at the policy level, but as a volunteer, you, Lonnie, could talk to their food service director and say, hey, I would like to volunteer, but not as an advisory group, because again, that's at the policy level.
So would that require a health permit, a food handler's permit in order to do that?
I don't know what the Hour Center, my guess is that they have their kitchen licensed. And they handle all of that, and it would really be a matter of you, Arlene, or me, Christina, approaching the Hour Center and saying, I'd like to volunteer, how might I do that?
Okay.
Anybody else? I got one question.
You're exactly right. Being a volunteer.
Okay, so
Yeah.
hey,
That's what
I
they
wasn't
do.
too far off.
You just go and you volunteer, and then if you want to work in the kitchen, you can.
So
They
you're
have a regular chef that's there.
yes. So you're a volunteer, but you don't do it on behalf of the Senior Center Advisory Group.
I did.
Got it.
I did it before I was on.
Perfect.
Yeah, so thank you. That was really valuable information. Appreciate it.
Took a little bit to, yeah.
I got one question. I've been thinking about this a lot,
Okay.
and just where do we fit in, all that kind of stuff. And as I remember Chuck's comments a meeting or two ago, he said something when we were talking about supplemental programs and whatever. I think he said something like, we only would subsidize or provide funds for something that has to do directly with
the senior center.
with the senior center and
Programs.
on site.
Okay.
I think he said something on that order.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if that's true, and then if we're basically advisory in nature, and things go up to the city council, and at the same time, let's say for XYZ program, and at the same time, we have agreement from the Friends group for XYZ program. Well, it seems like, and Ronnie, I think you told me once, we'd have, if we're going to accept money to put into your budget, for example, we'd have to get city council approval, and then it would go back down through whatever your allocation process is. So the money would come out and staff or resources at your level to provide the services that we recommended, Friends supported, and that's kind of our involvement, other than the 30,000-foot policy recommendations.
Right.
Do I have that right? Is that close?
Well, yeah. I think the other piece to that is that where it requires city council approval, really are in two ways. One is if it is a money that comes from another government agency, so a state grant, a federal grant, that has to be approved by city council to be able to accept that. It has to be an intergovernmental agreement. The other way that city council has oversight of this is in our appropriations. So there's 4 appropriations each year, one every 3 months. And so say we were to get $100,000 from Longmont Community Foundation or from the Friends of Longmont Senior Services, Ronnie would include that in the appropriation that would come up in March or whatever. And then city council would look at all of the appropriations and approve them at that point. And so those are the two ways. But yes, you're correct. They do see it at that level.
Okay, any other questions?
So, let me see if I'm a bit confused here. It sounds to me like what you are suggesting is that we work with some of these, like our center or food rescue or some of these places as volunteers, and that's how we will work as an advisory board.
Not as an advisory board.
But I mean as a volunteer, yeah.
Right, but it wouldn't be on behalf of the advisory board at all, because the advisory board as a body cannot get involved in programmatic efforts.
I got that.
Yeah, but you as a person, Arlene, could decide that you want to volunteer for the Hour Center or for Safe Shelter or Wild Plum. Like you could do that apart. And so I'm not making the recommendation that any of you should volunteer at any place, but should you want to, like in Anne's case, should you want to, that is an opportunity in the community.
Okay, so it sounds like that's the direction that you want us to go as individuals. So what we have been trying to do is not going to be acceptable.
Not acceptable in terms of the operationalizing of it. And so running a food hub, providing transportation, like driving a van for people, that is programmatic. The involvement that I would see that the board has is really, like Dave said, at that 30,000 foot view, to really give that information to city council and say, as an advisory board, this is what we have learned. And some possible outcomes of that could be A, that you really explore this through the National League of Cities to see what's happening on a national level, or B, look at securing funds through the city to meet this need, and that could look about a variety of different ways. The city already has human services agency funding. Do you want to make a recommendation that the food service, the people who are providing, really closing the gap on food insecurity, Longmont Food Rescue, Our Center, I'm sure I'm missing Community Food Share, I'm sure I'm missing others. You could make a recommendation that, hey, you would like more funds leveraged for that specific area, using the data that you have collected.
That's something I'll cover in the meeting we had with Jeff and Ronnie, saying that information came up.
Okay.
What next step we could do.
Right, and our department manages the Human Services Agency funding, which an advisory board like this reviews applications, they score them, and then in December we take that to city council and say, okay, we would like to fund X percentage of this in health and wellness, this percent in addressing unhoused issues. And so we lay that out for council and they say, yes, that's acceptable, or no, make these modifications. And so that's where I think that the research and the information that you all have when you present to council next year is really good information for them to have as they go forward and they make funding recommendations.
Sounds like a lot of work to me. It is a lot of work.
The other day, just a couple of weeks ago, the American Legion had a open house, if you will.
Okay.
Ubaldo Valdez
Uh-huh.
asked for materials to give out there.
Okay.
I went, and assisted him.
Okay.
Because he asked me if I'd go. I mean, is there any kind of violation there? Because, I mean, I guess we were we were giving out materials for the senior center, but I didn't know if we did anything wrong.
No,
Okay.
Sounds like he's volunteering at that point.
Right,
Okay. I'll just volunteer.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think that there is, I mean, if you think of like other community events that we have, Cinco de Mayo, for example, I know that staff and advisory board and staff and city council, they partner to really do that exact same thing.
Okay.
Give out information. It really is that programmatic, like, if you wanted to go to the was it American Legion? The American Legion and have and prepare taxes for people on behalf of the senior center. Then that would not be acceptable because that really would be programmatic.
Okay.
But I guess it's fair to say in that same capacity, at any point, anybody could collect flyers, attend an event on their own, and distribute them, right? Because it's not on behalf of the senior center. We have the programming piece. We haven't identified that need. We haven't said we wanted our staff and our advisory board to work together to provide that. It's just on your own if you wanted to grab those and grab them. That is okay.
Sounds good. I want to make sure.
Yeah, no, and it's similar to city council attending an event and a parent comes up to them and says, I need help with my child or my teenager. What does the city have? And, a city council member could say, contact this person at Children, Youth and Families, or here is this pamphlet. It would be similar to that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Okay, maybe we can move on. You took 5 minutes.
Sorry, I tried to talk fast.
Information.
Yeah, very
That was
I'm
good.
gonna run to get some water really quick.
Anytime you can clarify stuff like that for us, it's really helpful.
Absolutely,
because
it's my
we're all
pleasure.
kind of new at this. so-
My pleasure. I'm gonna grab some more, yeah.
Okay, all right, old business, where are we at here?
We were gonna move to.
I'll go directly to item C, food insecurities, and John, you're going to introduce.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is.
Before I spoke before, I had the opportunity to meet with some people who were doing this Longmont rescue stuff.
Period.
I had no idea what that was. I went to one of their giveaways, I guess, Collier Park, and it was incredible to see. Food was put on the tables, people came by, took the food and whatever, and it gave me the first thought about why are they doing this? It's free, I understand that, but what's the need here? And that's what started me my whole path about bringing food insecurity to the group. I was really impressed by Naomi's group, and so I wanted to ask her to come and interview her and a couple other people, and decided that Naomi was the person to speak to us about what they're doing. So Naomi Curl, Executive Director, Longmont Food Rescue.
Thank you.
Welcome. There's a face behind that.
Yeah, I will take
I've
it
seen
off
the
for
face.
present, I promise.
There we go. Okay.
You want should we turn the lights off?
Transferring over there.
Down in front.
Sorry, give us 1 second.
Yeah, we're just trying to get the projector to work.
Okay, watch out for this leg here. I can guarantee I would go.
What's her name?
I'm going to. Sorry. Hey, Bianca.
Hey,
There we go.
hey, not.
Yeah, now I'm seeing
No,
it,
the
but
mouse is there.
There
we go. Perfect.
Thank you.
No problem.
Sorry, didn't mean to turn the light off on you, Bianca. I didn't want you to trip.
Okay.
Spotlight. I know, huh?
All right, hi, I'm Naomi Curlin. I'm the Executive Director of Longmont Food Rescue, and I want to share a little bit about our background, our programs, and then some of the potential partnerships with the Senior Center. I've been with the organization since 2020, and I've been in the food rescue world for a decade before that, so it's my passion, and I'm really excited to talk about the Senior Center re-engaging as a food hub. So our mission is to redistribute nutritious food that might otherwise go to waste to people experiencing food, housing, and financial insecurity while educating our local communities about food justice. So we really do try to emphasize nutritious food and prioritize that when we can. We work with farmers markets and local growers throughout the growing season. We also work with grocery stores, prioritize stores like Sprouts and Whole Foods that give high quality organic products. So we're really looking at increasing the nutritional value in the free health hunger support system, because often nutritional value is one of the things that is not highly prioritized when we talk about feeding people. So what we do, we take food, as I said, from grocery stores, farmers markets, farms, restaurants, other food providers, sometimes convenience stores, and we bring it directly to where people need it, both in residential settings and food hubs, existing places where people might already be seeking services. So we look where people might be gathering outside of residential programs and bring the food to where the people are, and just really try to open up access and utilize where people could use that support. So some of our programs, no cost grocery. This is the residential side, but also we have worked with the Senior Center in the past on this. So prior to 2020, we were bringing food to the Senior Center. The picture on the left, where it says brought each second Monday by Longmont Food Rescue with Meals on Wheels, that was a share table that was set up at the Senior Center, that when people were coming and getting meals for lunch and stuff, they could also take some groceries home with them. That program shut down in 2020 when the Senior Center shut down, and as things have been reopening, we are looking to re-engage some partnerships around having a share table again. And then on the right, there's different residential programs. We work with Longmont Housing Authority to identify senior living facilities where they might already be receiving food resources or needing food resources, and how can we supplement that? So I think Community Food Share was mentioned earlier as a resource that exists on a large scale. They do the Elder Share program, and so usually if a residential site is receiving Elder Share, they already are shown at risk, at need for food resources. Elder Share does usually every other week deliveries. A lot of it's non-perishable foods, a lot of it is shelf-stable, and so we try to supplement that at these residential sites with the type of food that you see in these photos, stuff that is from the farmer's market, stuff that's nutritious and fresh. Other programs, we do open food distributions that anyone can come to. We really are about removing barriers to access and any red tape. So if you feel you need food resources, you can come to one of our events. We don't take proof of need, identification, paperwork. There's no waiting to get a registration card. The only question we ask at our food distributions is how many people are you feeding, so we can try to provide an appropriate amount of food for that family. And so we have a drive-up model and a walk-up model. We do these twice a month, and we do additional produce-heavy pop-ups during the summer, where we add on an extra juice distribution each month that is mostly harvested from local farms in the area. So again, identifying when we have excess nutritional food, making sure it gets out in our community, utilized, and really just connecting people with food that's already produced in Longmont and the surrounding area that they might not otherwise have access to due to financial barriers, transportation barriers, other sorts of barriers to access. Also in the growing months, we operate Fresh Food Connect, which is a separate app that any home gardener can sign up for. So if you grow your own food and you have too many zucchinis or tomatoes this time of year, you can upload a donation. Our volunteers come by once a week to pick up those donations. and bring them to our programs. This one right now goes to the in-between pantry. So if you know the in-between, they do transitional housing for people coming out of homelessness, and they have a food pantry a couple times a week. That's where this food this year is going. And also folks can choose to deliver their own donations to our community fridges. So that is the other big program that we've done for now 2 years. This program's 2 years old. So these are the first food hubs in Longmont that anyone can access any time of day, 24/7. Right now, all of the fridges we have are outdoors, so they can be accessed whenever people are in the neighborhood. And you can't always guarantee there's going to be food in them, but we do fill them multiple times a week. We maintain the cleanliness, the functioning of them all, and check in on what type of food's in there so we can clean things out as needed. But they really are unique in Longmont right now. They are creating additional food hubs for people who can't access food during other service hours or for other various barriers to entry for those food services. So I know our center, Community Food Share, both of those were mentioned earlier today. Our center is wonderful. They do great work. They also have limited operating hours, and a lot of folks are working during those hours. And so trying to fit that in with childcare and a full job, sometimes they can't get there in the right operating hours to access those food services. Our center also requires some paperwork to access their services and to get registered in their system. That can be a barrier to access for many people as well. So our center is a partner of ours. We love them, but we provide the services that do fill in those gaps in service that other people might not be able to access the food there.
What's the file cabinet?
So the file cabinets serve as dry goods pantry. So each of our fridges is paired with a dry goods pantry so people can donate and access all types of food. And we found file cabinets work really well, especially for outdoor venues, because they can close all the way, they're fully sealed off, very protected from the elements. And you can see in the center we had Longmont High School football team did painting for us as one of their volunteer projects 2 years ago for our first set of fridges. So we also make these fridges and pantries a community art piece. So working with local high school volunteers, we also work with Firehouse Art Center. So they did the designs for the 2 units you're seeing on the screen right now, and have also helped with some of the painting at other locations. So bringing together community to create beautiful pieces of community art that then also serve a really good service in the community for food access. So just a couple more pictures of what the outdoor fridge settings can be. The photo in the center is at the Heart of Longmont Church, where one of the community projects was to build a hutch to help protect that fridge from the elements since it did not have an overhang protection. You can see the fridge units on the left here are on a porch under an overhang, so that was pretty protected. And then on the right, that is at Longmont United Hospital. They're one of our host sites, and it is under a walkway covered over, so it has good protection there as well, so a hutch was not needed. So those are some of the siting things when we site outdoors, what we look for, and the ability to add a hutch if need be. I just wanted to put in a note about liability because this comes up whenever we talk to new potential host sites. Good Samaritan Food Donation Act protects food donors against liability when the donation happens through a nonprofit, which is how we operate. Many states, including Colorado, extend this protection to food businesses too. So there is pretty widespread liability coverage for the food that's donated and going into the fridges. We can safely share produce, shelf-stable items for those pantries, and packaged cooked food, and all the cooked food must be labeled from producers with food safety certificates. So what you might find in a deli section of a grocery store would be appropriate as long as it's unopened, it has the expiration date, sandwiches, whatever you might find that's properly packaged and unopened can go into the fridges. So we have these community guidelines. I've got some additional ones printed out if anyone wants to hold on to them for additional reference, but this is what is posted on our website. We share it with all our fridge users. So it goes through kind of what you cannot put in the fridges, how we operate, no home prepared meals, no alcoholic beverages, unopened and original packaging with expiration labels. If you could find it in a farmer's market or at a grocery store, it can go in a fridge. And yeah, there's just kind of some suggestions on how people can interact with the fridges, because they are kind of like little free libraries for food. Community members can access them. Donations can be made outside of our organization too. So we have plenty of those home growers who want to put in extra zucchini this time of year, and we welcome them to do that because that's the type of food that can be found in a farmer's market, and it's totally food safe to go in there. So what does being a host mean, and what do we do? So a host site would provide some sort of accessible space for the fridge and pantry, electrical outlet to power the fridge, and then if a camera is desired, if there's not already a camera on site, Wi-Fi access, so we can connect a Wi-Fi camera for security purposes. And then we provide everything else. That's it. That's all the host agreement is. We provide the fridge and the pantry. We bring weekly food, at least once a week, usually, especially this time of year, multiple times a week we're delivering food. We also have separate volunteers that their only job is weekly to go and check on the fridges for cleanliness and maintenance, and looking at expiration dates or taking any like vegetables that maybe were in there too long, pulling them out. So they are going by multiple times a week just to maintain the cleanliness and health of the fridge. And if there's something off, like, oh, the vegetables in here look like they're freezing, then they will let us know and we'll do a maintenance check on it to make sure that it's functioning properly as well. And so if there is an issue like that, we also provide the repairs as needed. And then we will provide that Wi-Fi camera if desired for additional security. And we provide the website and the social media. And our website has a landing page that has the map of where our fridge locations are. And if you click on an individual fridge site, it'll give you more information about where to access the fridge, anything else you need to know about that site. And it also has our community guidelines if people want to get more involved, all sorts of resources for folks about how our fridge program works. We maintain the entire program after it's set up. So it's really just having the site, and then we do everything else. And I would really, I know after hearing the last discussion that it is not within the purview of this board to be, maybe suggesting this for the senior center. It's something that you would recommend stuff to council and then council direct staff. I would recommend, if you were interested in food access in the senior community, one of your council recommendations could be, we want to reestablish the senior center as a hub for free food access. That is a recommendation you can make, and then council could direct staff to reestablish it as a hub. And I say reestablish because we were doing programs for the senior center before 2020, and having more hubs that remove the barriers to access that you might find at other organizations in the area, I think is really useful, especially seniors who might have limited mobility. Maybe coming to the senior center is their one trip of the day, is coming in and getting other services here. They could get food at the same time and not have to make an extra stop or wait in a line or do something that would require additional paperwork. All the other types of barriers they might experience trying to get food services somewhere else. That's why I think that it is highly beneficial to have the senior center as a hub for food services if possible. And that's something that you wouldn't have to fund or do anything around, but just recommend to reestablish that. So that's my personal 2 cents on what the senior center could provide to the populations. I am ready to open it up to discussion, questions. I think that's all I had. I just wanted to go through what we do and what I think could be a benefit. That share table that we used to have here, I mean, that's something that it doesn't really require financial investment or anything. It's just allowing a table to be accessible where people deliver food to. And one of the nice things, if you were also a hub that had a fridge, at the end of whenever that allotted time of having the food table out, like after 2 hours, you want to clear it off, anything that's left could go directly into a fridge. So the food isn't just going to, any excess food isn't going to waste, it's being refrigerated and then people can access it later. So it could actually work in tandem to have that kind of distribution table plus a fridge on the side.
clarifying question, so for that distribution, the food table that you were just referencing, who manages that? Meaning sets up, cleans up?
So I joined the organization in 2020, so I don't know exactly who used to do it. I think what I think was it was a collaboration between Longmont Food Rescue and Meals on Wheels. So we brought the food and helped set up the table, and then Meals on Wheels had been on site for food service during, I think, the lunch period at that time. And so then when they cleaned up the lunch service, they cleared off the table of anything that was left and put into their fridges back there for their, they would use it for whatever else they needed it for if it wasn't taken at the end of the day.
So that's a partnership in the past, so something happened today. Is there anyone from your organization who manages that food to be able to
pick up excess, you're saying, or
set up, be on site?
I think definitely the setup and dropping off, and then probably not on site throughout because it depends on the window too of what of how long that share table would be open and whether it would be coinciding again with people getting meal services or something else here. Are you doing meal services right now?
Just during the days I wanted to,
Yeah. So I think this was on a Monday over lunch period is what when we had been doing this previously. And so we could, if you needed support after the end of service to clear off anything that's left and put it into refrigeration, we could be coming back on site. I don't think we'd be maintaining it throughout unless you needed someone to be maintaining it throughout. But again, it depends on the length of what that is. If it's 2 hours, unless we're directly handing out food, I don't know if it would be necessary to have. I mean, we do the public food distributions where we do hand out food and are on site the whole time for the whole 2 hours. That is usually when we are pre-packing food or having to monitor things differently. So my understanding is that the senior center used to not have that on-site monitoring the entire time. But if it was part of the conversation that you would want someone on-site monitoring, we could do that.
Okay. And so I was exploring to see if that option existed because again, Meals did their own thing.
Yeah.
We're talking about what exists at the senior center. Yes, they're in our facility, they're building, but they're their own organization, right? Yeah.
And I think we've worked in partnership with them before, so we could talk about partnering again if it felt like that was a good thing to re-explore, or if we were going to do our own program, we could discuss what that would look like too. I think we would be willing if it was desired to have someone on site throughout the whole lunch period to be at the table and stuff. We could probably provide that. It's just setting up that expectation for our volunteers.
How do you handle a refrigerator in a place like this? I don't know that outside.
So we've had some discussions about the location at senior center, and if the desire is to have it indoors for safety and security reasons, I think we would be open to that. It would be our first indoor fridge, but as long as, like I said, on our website we have a little location finder, and within that location finder we could list that it's open during senior center hours and list out those hours so people know that it was inside. It's also where we list out information about how to access the fridge. So depending on if it was placed inside, where it's placed, we would have a little paragraph saying, when you enter the senior center, go to your left or whatever, so that people would know where to find it and aren't just blindly looking around the senior center for a fridge. So I think, we would be open to placing one indoors for the senior center if that was desired. I think the conversation it would be important to have a conversation about who can access it indoors. If it is an open community resource, can anyone come into the senior center and access it? And when we do promotions, like I said, we have a website and social media that promote things on. Are we targeting a certain audience for the food? Obviously, we want to serve seniors. Does that mean that we post less frequently about the senior center fridge on our social media and instead provide flyers or materials to senior living facilities about the fridge and saying, well, next time you're at the senior center, stop by the fridge that's there, so that we're targeting the populations you want to serve. So I think there'd have to be a distinction between how we're marketing, if we had this as a food hub, and then who can access it. For the share tables set up with the lunch program, that's pretty much seniors are accessing it because they're accessing it when they're getting lunch. For the fridge, we would want it to be accessible to anyone. If anyone, I'm allowed to walk in the door here at the senior center, no one's stopping me, so you might have people that aren't seniors coming in to use the fridge. the goal is that the majority of the people who are using it are already seeking services here. I just wouldn't want to create a barrier to people who might come in to access it and say, oh, you can't use that fridge because you're a senior. That would be a discussion. Like, we're not gonna have someone monitoring who's using the fridge at all times, right? Like, part of that is that people don't feel observed when they're using the fridge. They don't feel that there's stigma around it. So we don't want to really have like a check issue, like, are you a senior? Use this fridge. Do you understand that kind of distinction? So I think that's one of the conversations. If it's indoors, can we still remove this stigma to accessing it indoors?
How do you monitor for cleanliness?
Yeah, so our volunteers that come by twice a week, usually on a Monday and then either Thursday or Friday, they go to every single site. So again, yeah, our volunteers would be accessing it just to look for cleanliness, cleaning things out, any food. So I find that every couple of days is a good time to check in, wipe it down if there needs to be a wipe out, and taking out anything that is spoiled or is looking kind of whole. And then when we're not having a check-in, say it was a Wednesday and we're not coming by till Thursday or Friday, and someone accesses the fridge and is like, oh, there is something that needs to be addressed here. We have an Airtable form, an online form that anyone can fill out to give us feedback about the cleanliness, maintenance, levels of the fridge at any time. It goes to us, so we know if it needs an extra check. And we could also have a policy that anyone who wants to contact us directly, obviously my email contact information could be on hand, especially for senior center staff who's like, I think you need to come in to monitor this fridge today and not tomorrow. We could be on call for that if necessary. We usually find on all our sites, twice a week is plenty for keeping them clean.
Just out of curiosity, maybe you mentioned, what are you getting funding? How are you getting funding?
So our funding model is a mix of grants, foundation, and individual donors, which is kind of common for all nonprofits. So it's a mix of those funding sources.
It's a great thing that you're doing. But one other question I had with like the grocery store, stuff like that, they donate. A lot of times they donate stuff that's about to expire. Is there any rule as to how long it can be held?
Yes, and that's why we have the check-in set as we do. So the rule for grocery stores and convenience stores, they donate things when the sell-by date comes up. So there's a sell-by date and use-by date, and most everything is packaged with a sell-by date these days, because otherwise the grocery stores get confused. And so the use-by date is somewhere between 3 and 5 days after that sell-by date, and so that's why every 3 to 4 days we come by and check the fridges. And so if it's within the 3-day window, we go on the conservative side and say 3-day window from the sell-by date is when we would, after 3 days, we would clear it out.
Sure.
But they say 3 to 5 days, and then some people say a week, because if you bought it on Monday, you would want to be able to use it on a Friday or Saturday. But we do the 3-day window just to be conservative with that.
And I know you wouldn't have the information on this because you don't take information, but do you know if a lot of homeless folks are taking advantage of this? Do you have any idea how?
Taking advantage of it.
In a good way.
In a good way. Yeah.
In a good way.
Yes.
They're going to them and taking food and stuff.
So we, as you mentioned, we don't monitor the usage on the ground every day. We do have those security cameras, so if there's an issue, we could review footage, but we're not monitoring these cameras 24/7. It's only if we need to see if there is an issue with the site. And so all of our data on the fridge use is experiential and anecdotal, but almost every time I'm filling a fridge or cleaning a fridge, or I talk to other volunteers that do this work, there's always someone coming by and leaving. So we do have a good amount of kind of anecdotal evidence, and I see a pretty even split with at least the outdoor fridges. It might be different if we had an indoor fridge, between individuals and families who seem like they're going to be bringing stuff back for food preparation to a home, and unhoused folks who are coming by on bicycles. And what they're looking for is often very different, right? Like the produce right now that we put in from the farms or anything that needs food prep is often, being utilized by the families. And then stuff that's grab and go. A lot of times this time of year when it's hot, we're putting extra drinks in the fridge too. Those are always very useful to our house populations. Protein bars, pop-top cans of non-perishables, because a lot of them don't have a can opener and are looking for things that are like those hearty meal in a can. So when we host food drives that we know are going to go to our fridges and pantries, we'll have a list of most recommended foods or most requested foods from our populations, and some of those are more requested from unhoused folks, and some are more from individuals and families with households.
Well, thank you to you and your volunteers. This is a great program.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, John, for your volunteer.
I understand there's a lot of food available in the community.
Mhm.
It's partially a problem of distribution.
Mhm.
What's your best guess as far as how many hungry people there are in the community, especially older adults?
I don't have those numbers off the top
No,
of my
No, I
head.
mean, I'm just asking for, an estimate. First,
In Colorado, I think it's estimated that a third of Coloradans are facing food insecurity.
oh my God.
That was a statistic I think from 2 years ago. So that's the last time they did a full assessment, but that was post-pandemic, 2022, 2023 statistic was.
But there's lots of hungry people around.
And there is a scale of food insecurity. There's folks who are actively hungry, and then there's folks who don't know where their next meal is going to come from, and then there's folks who are undernourished and are experiencing nutritional insecurity, where they might be able to pad out a meal for a day or a week, but it might not be vitally sustaining because of the types of food that they can afford or have access to might be not nutritionally dense. And so it's also quality of food, and that's why we really focus on that part of our mission too, of trying to get the high nutrient food out in the community.
So part of the work that Children, Youth, and Families has done is really exploring where there are food deserts in the community, where it really is a barrier for individuals to get to the grocery store. And so I know that on the east side where the youth center is located, that really has been identified as a food desert.
Yep.
Does your organization kind of do some of that same research and kind of target where you want to put refrigerators based on that?
Yes. Part of it, there are areas we want to expand into.
Okay.
And then part of it is where we've already had host relationships and who has, agreed to host a fridge. So you're gonna find someone in the right region to do that. But we do look at the food deserts. We're setting up a new program, and that's why both of our 2 monthly open food distributions that we do. One is at the YMCA parking lot, which is right by the youth center, and the other is at Collier Park. So both are kind of in the same region that we know has been identified as a food desert. So we know that community could use extra access. We've also worked with mobile home communities before, and looking at those areas that might not have a grocery store within a mile of walking distance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
That was so interesting. It's
Yeah.
amazing what you do. It's nice to be there. I mean,
It's nice to hear the complete picture, see the complete picture and get all the information. Very helpful.
That was just excellent.
Very good. Appreciate it.
Well, if anyone wants to follow up with me after this, I know that John has my contact information, and you can also just look up Longmont Food Rescue. The contact there goes to me. Did you have any other things that you want to discuss or questions?
You can grab a card before you head out, that'd be great.
You can stick around for the rest of the evening. It's really gonna be, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Really boring. Please feel good. You're welcome. Can I talk a little more about food insecurity?
Yes.
All right. Again, thank you, Naomi.
Yeah.
You've done a wonderful presentation. Christina, I have a question. If
Okay.
Naomi was to come here and do this food distribution, all this, as long as they're not involved going forward, they just brought her.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's not an issue in the program.
No, it would be really Ronnie, and it sounds like he's doing that now to make connection to see, how he would or wouldn't operationalize that. And so I think, it's bringing information, it's, providing those connections, that's totally appropriate. And he could decide, and I don't know what the conversation entails, but he could decide that that's something that, he would want to do now. He wouldn't need to wait for council to get that direction because it wouldn't require any staff, additional staff from the general fund. So yeah, and it sounds like he making
Looks
those
like he's following up on that one.
Yep.
Well, let me just kind of highlight, based on what's been talked about here, what's happened. Believe it or not, we started this whole process in June. I'm aging as we do this project because it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But just to give you a timeline of what's happened, we introduced it in June and July, early July, the committee formed up around Ann, Lonnie, and myself and Arlene. We started mapping out strategies to get an idea of what the issues were. What is food insecurity? How does it affect people here in Longmont? July and August, we met separately and began to interview local food support organizations to find out what was being done. Because in the first pass that we made, we recognized that on a national level, there was recognition of food insecurities. The federal government funds a lot of things, Feeding America, what have you. Regionally, there was activity going on to people like food share. And there's a recognition in Longmont that growing senior population talked about transportation, talked about all the things they talk about, not about food, which surprised me. But then when I talked to Katie Weiser and other people, they say food insecurity doesn't get talked about because people are embarrassed. They're embarrassed to talk about it, that they can't put food on their table. So that keeps that sort of a hidden problem, a hidden hunger, and talking to people. So in August, we began facility visits, Meals on Wheels, the Honor Center, Food Rescue, Longmont Housing Authority, Community Food Share. We also met with various city staff to get an idea of what available community resources we had. A number of you were at the presentation that Lindsay Neville did in August on the area agency on aging. It was one of the 56 slides talking about all the things that they do. There was one slide that talked about food insecurity. That specifically said that in 2018, 36% of the people contacted felt that food availability was poor, fair to poor. 3 years later, 6 years later, that number was 44%. It's a growing issue. When we talked about last month, the average cost of meal in Boulder County in 2018 was up 28%, 18% higher than the rest of Colorado at 37%. Cost of meals in Boulder, 37% higher than anywhere else in the country. We are fortunate in a lot of areas, food insecurity is one of them. We made some contacts at the El Comité's food health fair. We also followed up with Intercambio. We talked to the Latino community and in Intercambio's case with those who were other non-English speakers. There's a desire to do more outreach. Again, the focus is not there yet. We also met with Ronnie and Arlene and myself met with Carmen Ramirez. She's a neighborhood resource specialist, Guillermo Estrada, to find out what information they have on a community-wide basis. It was interesting, they volunteered to give us a map by ward to show, and in that ward map to show age, financial resources, and people who are using or accessing food through a SNAP program, what have you, that they can identify by ward where the issues are. And they gave us a number of areas. Says if you want to make an impact quickly, here's 500 units that we can help you access. You can ask your question about food insecurity. After that, the issues that Christina mentioned, we ran into mission creep. mission creep, where it was perceived by one of the organizations that we were somehow infringing on an area that we have a food pantry here, which is never the case. But it raised the issue of the advisory board appearing to do the program, which we became very sure we couldn't do that. However, in that same meeting, there was a shift that came. We met with Arlene and I met with Ronnie and with Jeff. And again, you can't do a program, that's not the advisory board's role. However, they asked us to step back, twist a little bit, and take a look at this. And what they suggested, rather than having a food hub here that may have limited quantifiable results, they suggested that, Jeff in particular, that we instead create a presentation and a proposal to the city manager. And Jeff felt, and Ronnie supported that by doing that, we could get a clearer picture of what the city would like to hear and what might be taken to council in the future. And the opportunity that created for the advisory board, if successful, would significantly enhance the support presentation to the council in 2025. And Jeff also, Ronnie offered to help in putting that presentation together and accompanying us to make that presentation. What became clear early on is that there's a national level food insecurity is a big deal. People are dealing with it. Regionally, a big deal. Locally, it's supported by a number of food support organizations, but it's not supported by the city. Transportation is, housing is, whatever. Those are all great programs. But if you ask people what 4 basic needs, food's always number 1 or 2, and it's just not something people talked about. I think we can bring some focus to what we've got to do here. I think what's going to require, yes, there's a lot of work. It's also going to require more participation on the part of the advisory board with direction from staff to not overstep those boundaries. So at some point we're going to ask help to help us interview and do things like that as we become clear on how to put the presentation together for the city manager. And that brings you up to the last 3 months that feels like a year out of my life. But it's a program that the committee's had. Lonnie, Marlene, and Ann have really helped with. And their enthusiasm has really been wonderful. But we're going to come back and ask for other people to participate. Be aware. Any questions, comments?
Thank you.
Wonders?
You've done a great job with this, John.
Yes.
You really delved into it and, really reached out to a lot of places and covered things. The more you reached out, the more you find you had to speak to somebody else, and you did it. So kudos to you. You really followed this through and really worked hard on it.
I've had a lot of help. And the meeting with Jeff and Ronnie was really in line with Christine was saying, you can't do program. I kept thinking there's got to be a way to do this. And the suggestion was present to the city manager, get his input, and see where it goes from there.
When would you do the city manager thing? Anytime?
I have no idea of how much information how to present it at this point. I know that we will not lack for information, but I know he's a busy man. I don't want him to take up a lot of time, so we'll see. I'll talk with him.
It won't be during budget.
Yeah, it'd probably have to be after the work.
Oh, I'm hoping in my lifetime I can get this done. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Because of budget?
Yeah, we have a lot to gather and get it so it's in the format.
What do you say? What are you recommending as our next steps, or your next steps?
I'd like the committee and I to talk further about that, and then go to Ronnie, Jeff, and Christine and say, okay, give us some ideas how to take this information and make it understandable quickly. So I would see, we'll see by next meeting what's come up. Have we done that?
Okay, so.
There'll be a brief presentation at that point.
As to, okay. So we're talking about a draft presentation to the city manager by next meeting?
No, we're talking about gathering the information to get some idea of the
Okay.
length and breadth and width of what we want to talk about, and talk to senior staff about how to make that work. So I think the next meeting we talk about how the process is going,
Okay.
how that's unfolding, because we had no idea at this point. It was just brought up a week ago to refocus.
Okay.
And that puts the clearly it puts the food hub on hold here unless Naomi does something.
Does Harold get proposals like that quite a bit? I mean, is this going to be impactful? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
Well, I think anytime he can hear about kind of what is going on in the community is helpful. He's very involved in, lots of different areas as far as, moving things forward. I'm trying to think in the past, it was before Harold, but we did do a presentation to our previous city manager on gang involvement, for example, as it was something that was emerging. This was in the probably 15, 20 years ago. Early 2000s, we did do a presentation to board and our city manager at that point to say, this is what we're seeing. This is, these are the areas of concern. This is how we think that we should work with our public safety department. This is how we should tackle the issue. And it really came, from input that we got from the community, from the school districts, from our partners in the school district, our partners, just across the community to say, this is what's going on.
I mean, you were there with Jeff. What did you feel? I thought he was pretty enthusiastic. You both seemed enthusiastic about putting something like that together for Harold. As far as
So being able to help support with that, yeah. I mean, if we have a direction where we want to go, could we help support? You're saying logistical pieces, right? Accessing the PowerPoint, putting that information into different slides. That support can be available.
I think, there's the opportunity to do that, and there's the opportunity, the standing meeting that you all have with him yearly, where you talk about emerging issues or your areas of focus. I mean, maybe you want to consider having this be a big part of that. And I think you were going to maybe meet with him in February or March, if I remember right. That would give you some time to get that together.
just February, March. This coming February, March. Okay.
Yeah, that's what
Or, but it could be that you want to do it after budget, November, December, which would also be.
Is there any advice that you would give John and others that work on it? Knowing Harold as little as I do, he seems to be a very data-oriented guy. So the more you can reduce things to quantifiable measures, numbers, and whatever, probably the better off you are. Which might be a little difficult, I don't know. But specific versus general, and I don't know, do you have any advice for that sort of?
I think looking at a couple of different things. So, homelessness or unhoused issue is huge. Getting people into housing is huge. That's a big area of focus. Supporting people in permanent supportive housing, whether it's with mental health resources or other resources, I think is huge for him. And so I think it's about painting that picture of the data, community-wide, looking at, as Naomi talked about, what areas of the city are within a mile of walking distance, and then making potentially some recommendations about, we have this permanent supportive housing development that, and this is just an example that is 2 miles within walking distance of a grocery store. We might recommend that the city have a partnership with Longmont Food Rescue, or whatever that looks like. More outreach from Meals on Wheels. Like, he can't direct what Meals on Wheels does, but what he can say is, Longmont Housing Authority might want to consider partnership, for example.
Yeah, that was one of the things we met with community neighborhood resource group, is that they have these maps that show exactly that. Here's concentrations of people who are food insecure because of the SNAP benefit. We know they have SNAP benefits and what have you. So that's just coming to the front. I mean, part of this has been, it's only thing is get some
Right.
finding information on what to pursue, and that came up a week and a half ago.
Then you could overlay where the grocery stores are on that same map. You know, put, you know, where Walmart is, where Safeway is, where King Soopers is, and then start to do that. What we found when we did this research through Children, Youth, and Families is that many families were getting meals from 7-Eleven. So, you know, the canned goods, they have some, you know, little bit of fruits and veggies, but that really was if they had a barrier to transportation, and you know, barrier to just getting to a grocery store. That really was what the option was. And so what were some ways that we could do that? So having a community food share, the YMCA, those were kind of some of the things that were operationalized.
You've been really helpful all along. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I've never seen anybody respond so quick to a request for information. It gets home before I get home. Thank you.
Yeah. It helps that, you know, my previous job, we really did look at this food security issue for families and young children. So.
Well, it's interesting to me to see how much was put on hold with COVID and how
And now it's resurfacing.
just slowly started to do so much other stuff.
Yeah.
Also some of the older programs, like I didn't realize there'd been a food help here.
Me neither. No,
So-
yeah, things just got paralyzed for a while, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing at the youth center as well. Is that there really was a slump in attendance, and it took a little while to get out of that, and now we're at that place, you know, pre-COVID, with numbers that are even higher because people are in more need.
Right. Thank you. That's it for me.
That's it for you, okay. No, John, you really opened up a great area.
Yes.
I had no idea.
Well, me either. Now we know.
Would you do it again if you knew that?
No, I would actually, because it's such a basic need.
It is.
That's the thing that's.
And I think it's great.
I appreciate the support of the advisory council and getting clear on what that role means.
It's been helpful for all of us. I think all of us had to kind of think a little bit. I have, for sure. Okay. Let's move on to updates as far as transportation. Arlene, do you have anything today?
No, just, I didn't know if anybody had any questions. You've all got a copy of this, so,
Okay. All right. So no update there. Housing. Do you have any transportations? Any updates on housing line?
Not other than just the report I put out. There is something in the report about a meeting, so if you're interested at all about attainable housing as opposed to just affordable housing, there is a meeting going on in the city at the heart of Longmont Church. So if you want to read about that, if that is of any interest to anybody. Other than that, there's really no big issues in housing.
I'm just thinking forward to March or April when we make our presentation to City Council. Whatever's new is fine, but I think certainly, if nothing else, we can just reemphasize the kind of stuff that was covered before.
Sure, we don't want to forget about it.
Yeah.
We don't want to move on to other things,
Right.
but
Right.
that's why I think Arlene and I are just keeping people up on what's going on.
Yeah, and you've both been doing a good job, I'll say. I read your reports very carefully every time. Okay. New business, email communication. Lonnie, you wanted to have some clarification on that.
Yeah, we were running into a lot of problems when we were meeting about the food question. Because it was always, how do we do this? How do we talk to each other and not break the rule about meetings?
Mhm.
So I did see, and I'll ask you, Christina, I sent you an email once and you said, I'm gonna reply to Ronnie too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add Ronnie onto the thing. Did that break the rule of 3 people?
No, because he's staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does it work? Just within this
Advisory board,
advisory
yeah,
group?
and I'm gonna get some clarification from, our city clerk, just to make sure that I have the right information, because that's what we do with our Human Services Advisory Board. We don't email the whole group. All of the meetings have to be posted. There's just a process to that. So let me just make sure that we're doing that right, and then I can report, send Ronnie and Dave an email to say, this is what I learned. But
Okay.
that's what I understand, but let me just make sure that I'm right.
Okay, great. So two or more people or more than two people on the advisory board
It's considered a meeting.
cannot email each other, cannot get together and talk to each other without it being
Two or
a
more,
meeting.
two or more is considered a meeting.
Even though you're just sending out information, that would still be.
Yeah, it's all public, yeah, and that really is for transparency's sake, so that the community is aware of, all of the business of the city. It's the same with, city council members. And so, yeah, if the mayor comes to an event at the senior center, that's fine. If, the mayor and 3 other members come to the senior center for an event, we have to post that. So that people know that their public officials, are gathering at an event.
So even, say, 2 members of the advisory board were speaking to the liaison,
The
that
senior
considered-
service, which liaison?
city council.
I would think so, because technically they're a liaison of the advisory board, but let me double check. Alright, that's another.
We just, Sheila and I walked out one night, or one day talking to Marcia,
Yeah,
and it was like, oh, wait, can't say anything about the meeting.
yeah,
there's-
Marcia told you that, yep, so yeah, she would know that forwards and backwards as a public official, so I would say, yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
No official business.
So staff don't count.
So staff
Because
doesn't.
it's our job, yeah, you
I
can
didn't
meet
mean
with
to
all
put it
of
that
us.
way.
No, I know, you can meet with, you could email me and I could copy Ronnie and his whole team. Because it's, we're staff and that's the.
I've got a question on committees. Now, we've been avoiding committees, but if we wanted a committee, and I can see a couple of areas where next year we might want to form a couple of committees.
Mm-hmm.
So, anybody can suggest a committee, but we would approve a committee internally.
You vote on it? Mhm.
Okay, but then there would be, is it a 48-hour posting requirement for any meeting?
Is it 20,
You both know that.
24?
24, and you do that?
And so what I look for in that, if we have 2 or more people who need to meet, I do request more than 24 hours notice because of the logistics that go into planning and coordinating that.
Yeah.
We have to identify space available, right? So we have to get the
So the
information.
public could come to that?
Identify space available because it's an open meeting now, so we need to make sure we have adequate space. I need to look at those details because it's a public meeting. I'm assuming that we need to work with Longmont Public Media to have it recorded. Again, this meeting recorded, it's a public meeting, right? And so there's a lot of communication and finding space available here at the senior center. Working with Longmont Public Media to have this meeting recorded, and then time to create that communication that needs to be posted at least 24 hours in advance. So on paper, it's 24 hours in advance, but it takes us more than 24 hours to get all of that information together. So what I mean by that is, if we want to meet, and let's say it's Tuesday, give us a little bit more time, say, with not trying to avoid those quick turnarounds. Instead of, if it's a Tuesday, say we need to meet Wednesday, Friday or the next week would probably give us the time we need to make those connections and piece it together.
You do that then?
That would be,
You set it up?
I would work with Bianca.
You do the notice requirements and all
Right, just the same as we do as posting our board agenda to the public.
that? Okay, and a staff member has to be there.
Yes.
Typically, you would be the person that would be there.
Right. And so I worked with Bianca to get that notice uploaded, so it's visible to the public, and then those are the things that
We may want to do that. I don't know, I just want to be clear.
Yes.
which is why we pretty much kept to 2 people in
Yeah,
every committee.
it's a pain.
It's a lot to go through.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a pain for you too, I mean, for everybody.
I mean,
But I understand the transparency.
And I just sent a quick message to our city clerk to get clarification. She probably will get back to me by the end of the year.
Okay. Anything further on that? Did you get your questions answered, Lonnie?
yes, I did, thank you.
Okay, next item then would be outreach. We lumped out the Day of the Dead and the, what was it?
The Y Fiesta event.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple of events coming up, and especially since we're really trying hard to reach out to the Spanish-speaking community, I'm curious as to whether we can be involved in these things. We can do a show, we could just be there to hand out literature. So the first one is the Day of the Dead. I understand that's an event put on by the museum. Would there be any way we could ask the museum if we could have just a table there to hand out literature about the senior center? Does that go together at all, or does it conflict?
I think that might be a conflict because I don't think they have resource tables. It's not like a Cinco de Mayo event.
Okay.
It really is, yeah.
It's like a celebration.
So, yeah, they don't have, the way that, other city departments are involved are more, again, in the programmatic aspect. So they have like people from the youth center, staff from the youth center they've had in the past helping kids make sugar skulls. Or, but they really didn't take any information about the youth center.
Okay.
It would be similar to like maybe a movie or a dance that you would have here, that it really is a specific program.
Right. And so
Okay.
with that same example, a CEP event that we're holding here, right? We've identified in our go, we've communicated that to the public. We get 80 plus people to that, and if recreation or library or any other department reaches out and say, hey, can I set up in your lobby to catch people coming through, and that's almost like that conflict that we're talking about. Could we, during regular business hours, have that opportunity at table? As you see, we have one set out in our lobby.
Right.
That's a different conversation, right?
And kind of
so,
part of what, is done here.
right,
That's part
right.
of what you make it.
And so what we want to avoid is that programmatic piece that Christina was talking about, reaching out to ask if we can almost, involve ourselves in their program. We want to be careful with that too. When there is an opportunity where they are setting up event tables, they reach out to to all the departments to say, like Cinco de Mayo. There's if you're interested in setting up a table, there's a process for that, right? We communicate that out, let it know that Senior Services wants to have a table and they assign us a location. So they're 2 different events with 2 different intents. So we just want to make sure.
But it just seemed like such a perfect opportunity to reach out to,
But
seniors.
there's still that opportunity, like Christina had mentioned, that volunteer piece, right? Instead of collecting the board, setting up the table, is there an opportunity for an individual from the board member to say, I want to volunteer, walk around and hand out material if anybody's interested in pamphlets, things like that.
Yeah, and we've had through the years, for example, big family events through children, youth, and families, and we've had requests from, for example, public health. Can we come in and do a survey? Or can we do outreach at that event? Because it does seem like a really good opportunity, but it really conflicted with the goal and the effort that the team had in really focusing on that specific program for the division. And you do that with one organization, and then it just opens it up to, kind of opening a can of worms, and then it becomes a resource there.
Well, let me lead into the second event. It's called the Y Fiesta event. It's at the YMCA. Here's what I was given as a description. The Y Fiesta is a community event to recognize and celebrate the many contributions, diverse cultures, and extensive history of our ancestors, from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, Central and South America. We invited the community to come to the Longmont YMCA to enjoy food, games, entertainment, and visit booths from businesses in our community, such as Good Life Rescue, Amistad, I'm not familiar with what that is, bilingual healthcare specialists, A Way Forward, Recovering Cafe, to name a few. During the event, there will be a mariachi band from Skyline High School, dancers from, I'm going to crucify this, Ballas de Mi Terra,
Right, isn't it?
okay, and the Y Zumba class, I got that right. And entertainment from our YMCA preschool classes. It's a free event, we could get a table, we could get a booth, and they are free. So what does that fall under? Is that something we might get involved in?
Again, I think for me, and I could be wrong, so please correct me. I think it really is about that programmatic aspect of staff giving, this is the offerings that we have at the senior center. So similar to Cinco de Mayo, is it staff and advisory board member or other members, partnering to do that? I think the question that Ronnie probably would ask is that within our demographic? And would it, what's the return on investment as far as, having a table there and using staff hours to do that specific event? Is it targeted toward children and I don't know enough about that versus like a Cinco de Mayo when it's a community-wide event with 10,000 people. And so those were the questions that I would ask.
Art, very quick, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, one of the biggest concerns I have about some of these activities is that there really are family events.
Mm-hmm. Celebrations.
Yeah, and I just feel uncomfortable taking parents away from their children. And because at this time, I really think that the families, the parents, the kids, how do I want to say it, are very united together. They do everything together. And taking them from that, I wouldn't feel real comfortable.
Yeah, they will have mariachis, so they will have people focusing in the music and another people. So they will have a presentation for the kids. So I think it will be. I don't think it will be productive for us.
I'm sorry, what was that last sentence? I didn't hear.
Productive.
Yeah.
Productive?
Yeah. So it's like when we went to the feria, we have only 4 people who signed up, and we were the whole day. So it was a beautiful dance with a lot of people there, but it wasn't enough people. It wasn't enough people. It was so empty. In the afternoon was so empty. I don't know in the morning. But wherever people who speak Spanish, they come close. I talking to them about the senior center. So if they have families, so like parents or families who will be interested in come to the senior center, I give the information. But I put in a sheet to write down, and we get only 4 people.
What did you say?
And the whole day.
Yeah, no, it wasn't good.
But right now, what I'm doing is in the place that I live, so I start visiting my neighbors and giving information in person. And I think it is working better because they start calling me openly here. Yeah, I think it's working more for us.
Yeah.
So going to the people that I know, they have parents or they're living parents there, and now we are still doing that.
And I envision that same example, the YMCA opportunity, almost mirroring it, right? It's not our targeted demographic, so the interest isn't really, could not be there, right? And not only that, I heard violinists listed on there, so they're a senior center group. We gave them space here to practice. They practice and they perform in the community, but they're not sponsored by the senior center, right? We gave them the space to perform or practice so they can go do that work in the community. They're going on their own, right? They're going on their own on behalf of their own group, not on behalf of the senior center.
Right.
But, you know, my assumption is they're going to bring awareness, culturally, right, to what they do. This opportunity exists, and almost try to recruit for their program, not on behalf of the senior center, but recruit for their program. And
If
so,
Longmont Meals on Wheels went somewhere
Exactly.
to recruit volunteers. Yeah.
right. So,
We appreciate that, you know, I mean, I think it's a good things to bring up here.
Well, there's one more, so you can tell me what you think of this. Feria del Tamal.
Oh, come on.
It's run by the Chino Chamber of Commerce.
Motor comment.
Do you know anything about that?
know something about
I never.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
it. It's not gonna be, I think, something we wanna be involved in. It's gonna be a variety of vendors, there's gonna be luchador wrestling,
Oh,
bands.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be fun. And I do intend to go, but I just don't think it's the kind of attention that we wanna have.
Okay.
I'm wondering if there's like, you know, maybe if this group has a conversation, you know, for the following year, what some of those, in conjunction with the senior center staff, you know, what some of those opportunities in the community are, you know, bigger ones. The, you know, Cinco de Mayo, which I know you always, the senior center always does. And then we just, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, had Unity in the Community. That's put on by the chamber as well. That might be a good opportunity to, for the staff to, you know, depending on if it's, you know, you have the resources to do that, hand out information about the senior center, and or if you all have vacancies on your board, you could also look at using that avenue to get the word out.
And what I've been thinking, so maybe I need to switch the way I think about this. What I've been thinking is that the advisory board could be a backup to the staff of the organization of the center, so that when they do outreach events, we could pop in as volunteers and give the staff a break, so they don't have to go to these things on weekends or anything like that. You know, we could just be considered another group of people who could man a booth and give out literature and stuff like that. So in light of that, I've been looking at things that I get on my feeds and stuff and saying, oh, could we do that? Could we do that? Now you've clarified a little more how I should hone in on what I'm looking at. And if it's more of a community event, an informational event, or if it's more of a festivities.
Right, if there's a resource fair attached, then I think it's a conversation, you know, first and foremost with Lonnie to say, you know, what is the plan, you know, what's the bigger senior center plan as far as outreach, and, you know, I know he's pulling some things together based on the you know, goals that we identified, and you know, does that fit within the plan. And I did hear back on another note from the city clerk's office, and I'm happy to get that information.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, all I was really thinking was to be supportive of, you know, our group is active now. We have an active board, so I'd like, if you need help with outreach, I think that's something we're all very interested in. And so that's where I was coming from when I was looking at these events and bringing them up as options, so.
Great. And a lot of these, depending on the focus and attention of the event taking place, you know, a lot of them will reach out and ask if we're interested in setting up a booth, right? If it meets our need to support our specific demographic, and it makes sense, then absolutely we'll jump in on those opportunities. But always bring, I think that's okay still, Lonnie, to bring those recommendations. Like, hey, just want to see if we've heard about this event. It allows them this open conversation to say, oh, they reached out to me and it didn't make sense. Or, nope, we haven't heard. Okay, you know, are we interested in having somebody individually hand out pamphlets, or just even looking at it a little bit more, and getting that input. That was great to hear from everybody to say, hear their thoughts as to why or why not it might be a good idea.
And I think, I especially appreciate the effort to really make not only this board more diverse in representation, but also the senior center more diverse. I think that that's something that that really has been definitely something that I've noticed, and I'm really pleased with how the staff is doing that outreach, the involvement, and the desire of the board to help with that. I think speaks volumes to kind of where the senior center is headed, because years ago senior center looked really different, not very diverse at all, and so it's great that you have that as a focus. So I appreciate that.
And I just want to mention too, the health fair that we did, Maria really stepped up. I mean, she was in her element at that health fair. She was bebopping around and talking to everybody. I said, we have another art.
And about teachers, go figure.
Exactly.
Educators.
But she did such a good job. She had everything set up. She brought her kids to help out. And really, I mean, I said to her, you're kind of quiet in the meetings and I don't really know you too well or anything. But seeing her at that event, I was just like, you can come work with me or I'll work with you anytime. You were on it, you knew what you were doing, and I just want to say, for Maria, for Art, for John, for Dave, for Eric, myself, and almost everybody was there. And it was fun. You got a chance to chat with people and kind of get them to know them a little better and stuff
Well,
like that.
hopefully next year it will be bigger.
It would have been a lot better if we
Yeah,
could also
hopefully.
work more, but it was just nice to get to know each other and sit and chat.
It was challenging, especially when we have to be.
We became the tent.
Yeah, right.
I tell my son, they started and I say, my son, I think it's time to start putting the things in the cart. So we get the books and everything, my son and I, and put it in the cart. And then when we come back, so the wind was bad. So they blew some of the tents.
It's like 2:45. I was coming back at 3 to pick up everything. 2:45, the wind just.
Yeah, we just put it, well, not me, they just,
Yeah, Eric and I were hanging, holding on to this.
Took off with them.
the three of us was there. And then we just put it down and then it started raining and everything. So
Oh my
just in
goodness.
time.
Just it.
And beforehand, we had put up the tent, and so other people saw that, so we became the tent setter-uppers for other people. Like, hey, could you help us over here? Okay, I'll get you over there. Eric will get you over there.
My son has fun.
That's great.
He's a young boy, so he has fun.
That's great.
All right, enough of this
Right.
frivolity. Let's move on to the manager's report.
Oh, yeah.
City clerk said.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
The city clerk did respond. I'll take more of Ronnie's time, unless you want to go over this. Okay. So the city clerk did respond about meetings and emails. So technically, the rule is 3 or more, but they advise to not do it, period. And that really is in the effort for transparency around government operations. And so our city clerk says, we advise that you not do this. And then from the Colorado Municipal League, whenever the law guide, whenever there are 3 or more members, and I sent this to Bianca to put in the notes, whenever there are 3 or more members, or a quorum of members, if there's fewer than 3, of this local public body get together and public business is discussed, or formal action can be taken, the gathering is a meeting. And the municipal league directs it shall be open to the public. And so that really is the reason behind posting meetings, that if there are, 3 or more, it's a local public body, and public invited to be heard can come in and speak. Then as far as regarding email messages, meetings conducted by telephone, electronically, or by other means of communication provide various methods for public officials to confer. That includes conference calls and other non-traditional forums like Zoom and Teams meetings. It is under the statutory definition of a meeting. And in adding electronic communications to the statute, the General Assembly noted unique circumstances that the use of email and the like create, and the need to balance privacy interests of public officials with public interests in open governance. It explicitly subjects the email communication of elected officials that discuss pending legislation or other public business to the statutory requirements. So to me, that does say that it is, you're talking about food insecurity and maybe making recommendations to council. And so if 3 or more of you are on that email chain, it's public. And the city clerk advises to not do that.
So across the board, no exceptions. 3 or more people get together, it's just not, it's considered a meeting.
It's considered a meeting, needs to be posted, and people need to have the opportunity to come in and be heard.
So what you said before stands. Okay. Thank you.
But then it said 2, if there's 2, and business is being discussed, that's also considered a meeting, right? So I think that's where the 2 or more comes from.
Right.
If you're meeting with somebody to discuss business, that.
But I think you're headed down the right direction, Dave, that if you're gonna have committees, standing committees, then make that part of, maybe you have your committees that happen after this meeting, or I think there's lots of options.
I think maybe that's the way to go. Yeah. But we can talk about that. All right, moving on to the manager's report.
All right, due to
Yeah,
time.
we got 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Due to time, you have my board report. One thing that manager's report, one thing I really want to hit on is the work we are doing starting this week. I am working with utility building to provide some on-site support here at the senior center to help individuals, seniors specifically, but anybody in our community who needs help setting up their utility billing portal on the new website. So what we have done is identify dates and times, and I didn't have those, otherwise I would put them in the board meeting, but I will pull them up now. We've identified over the next 3 weeks, 2 days each week, for 2 hours each of those days, that we will be in on-site support. Utility billing staff, up to 3 staff members will be on site here at the senior center, while we have worked with our SETC group to have 3 or 4 volunteers on site as well. And so what we're going to do is, again, on these identified dates and times, be a drop-in location to receive that support. Individuals from our community will not need to bring a device. Our SETC staff and utility billing staff will have devices on site to walk them through that registration process to set up their portal. Those dates, and I could send them out in email after this, but I'll just share them here now. Thursday, September 5th from 3 to 5 p.m. Friday, September 6th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Tuesday, September 10th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Thursday, September 12th, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday, September 17th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And Wednesday, September 18th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And so this is for individuals who have had trouble seeking that support, who have had trouble setting up their new utility billing portal because they don't have access to a computer device, or they just don't know how to navigate the website to complete the registration process. So again, our SETC group is being trained today by utility billing, so we could start providing that support tomorrow. So a lot happened very quickly. And so in that process, utility billing, 2 months, right? We'll not be assessing late fees for the next 2 months, allowing everybody that time to set up that portal. So we've learned that there are some barriers that exist, so that's why we've made these adjustments to provide the support here at the senior center. So I just want to share that information with you so you're aware that if you have heard it, we are aware, we made those adjustments and have identified the supports to be put in place here. So that's all I have.
And do you have notices up, to let people know what the dates are and stuff?
So we just got this all underway. I sent an email last night at the end of the day to our staff. As soon as this meeting concludes, I'll start working on that. But I did let our comms team, with his plan to work to
I
get
don't
this
know.
out. I let, we're not running it, we're a support site and location, but I did make that recommendation that, that person in charge needs to communicate with our comms team to get that word out in the community of these dates and times here at the senior center. So what are we in control of though, right? Posting that in our building.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. City Council Liaison, Area Agency on Aging.
There's really nothing more to report, just the fact that Lindsay did come and do the presentation. If anybody has any questions about it, or if anybody needs the link on how to look it up and things, just let me know. I think I put it in the report, but I'm not positive. You did. I am good. I was stuck down in the south. I was there the day that they had the accident on the highway where they, were down on routes or 90. What am I trying to say? 70, where they lost all the piping on the highway and everything. That's where I was, so I didn't get back. It would have been a real tight move to get back after my doctor's appointment. I blew it completely, so I wasn't able to make it. But other than that, nothing else to report. If anybody has any questions, just let me know.
Your reports have been very good and very informative. Okay, trends. I had a meeting with Chuck the other day, and John, you can help me out here if you want to. He was talking about, we were just trying to coordinate, share information is probably a better word. I was really interested in the strategic planning effort that the Friends is engaged in. And Chuck was telling me, and this is preliminary, and so that's the way I'm going to present it today. It's just preliminary, but what he's got in mind, what the Strategic Planning Committee has in mind, that there be developed a long-range plan on the part of the senior center, a 5-year plan probably is what he said, where, you plan out your activities, your goals, your priorities, all that kind of stuff over the next 5 years. And the people involved in that planning, the Friends group, I guess the Strategic Planning Committee, the senior center staff, and the board. And over a period of time, and Chuck said something like this will probably take months, and I'm sure he's right. It'll take months it's not even formed totally yet, but it'll take a while to do the strategic plan. And the idea behind it, I think, correct me if I'm quoting this wrong, but I think the idea is the Friends group is more than happy and are ready to help with funding on certain programs or services. That's not the question. They're approaching $3 million that they're sitting on. And even if you just take their earnings each year, which would probably be about $150,000, that's just earnings, that's not counting contributions or anything like that. So there's some money there, and they're just, frankly, I think they're kind of wondering what to do with it. So I think what they want to do then is if they have this plan in place, they can then, we then would use it as a guide to make recommendations to the Friends group and say, hey, we'd like $100,000 to do this. And then they would take the plan and say, hey, to their board and say, well, gee, this fits in with the overall plan. We're going to approve this. Okay, then what do you do? Well, at that point, we would probably, we haven't done this yet, but we would take our proposal, our recommendation, saying we've discussed this with the Friends group for XYZ program, $150,000. City Council, we'd like you to endorse this and do whatever you need to get it into your budget for services and programs, whatever. And then after that's been approved, then it would come back down, and that's how you would get the money, and that's how we would implement it. but it's on the basis of a plan. And that's what Chuck is saying is so important. And I happen to agree. I think we do need something like that. What kind of plan? Well, what we talked about was a really comprehensive type of plan. And maybe to include not only, goals and activities for the next 5 years, and I don't know if that's the right time period, but it would need to be consistent with the city. And it might even get to the point where we would say, hey, what is the role of the senior center in the community? That could be part of the plan. Maybe even the ordinance, the way the ordinance is defined, or the bylaws. I mean, we're talking about a really comprehensive sort of thing. Maybe not. Maybe you look at it and everything's just fine. I'm just saying a really comprehensive, like you say, 30,000 feet type look at what's going on and how we can use the Friends group, the money that's there, and try to put it into something operational. And so that's what we talked about. And I thought that was pretty important. So 150 is not a whole lot of money, but it's a position. So that's what I've got to report as far as Friends is concerned. Any questions on that? I've got a handout on sustainability. 7 minutes left. This is just a lot of paper. There's not a lot of substance. I can go through this really quick. You can go through this at your leisure. This was the handout of the last sustainability meeting. And I just wanted to remind you of a couple of things. Go to page 3. I've just written down 3 on the page. Remember when Zach Lance was here? He was talking about the canopies that they were planning on putting on and reducing the heat in park areas, that sort of thing. They are in the process right now, the first bullet point on page 3, they are in the process of reviewing bids to install shade canopies over different areas of the city. So that's moving right along. And then under older adults, the second bullet point, they mentioned that what they're in the process of doing is interactive display in the senior center lobby. Ronnie, I was going to ask you, have they done anything on that? Has anything happened there?
No. Okay, other than the display that they put up?
Is that it? Just
That's
the
it.
display?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I remember. I don't remember interactive. I just remember the display, probably. Bianchi, were you just...
Well, they put
Pins that
so sorry, I thought you meant like staff interaction or yeah. So they put pins and then there's a couple cups for them to put information, but it asks a question, I believe, right?
Okay.
It's been up for a little bit.
Okay. So they did follow up on
Yeah.
that, so that's in place. Okay. And then on page 5, this is not directly relevant, just kind of indirectly. We've talked about recycling ordinances. Just for your information, on June 1st of this year, recycling is required for commercial and multifamily properties. Okay, if you follow that stuff, it's moving along. Second bullet point, and January 1st of next year, composting is required for food wholesalers, distributors, manufacturers, grocery stores. To me, that's a big deal. That's a lot of movement in the city. And then the recycling resource that's nothing in particular. And there's, so that's the main point I wanted to make there. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was, I guess that was about it. Yeah, so you can look through that as you have your leisure. I just thought I thought I'd bring you up to date on what sustainability is doing. Okay, future agenda items. Tell me what coordinated entry was again.
coordinated entry is the process for unhoused individuals to go through to start the path toward housing.
Oh,
Okay, so do we need a presentation on that, or I'm not quite sure what we're gonna do with that.
Can you say that real quick?
It's kind of like, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking, it's kind of like signing up with the city or the county, to let them know you're gonna be interested in any housing programs and any services or any benefits by signing up that would be available to you. Am I kind of saying it correctly?
Right. It's actually, Hope does the coordinated entry for Longmont. And so it's meeting with somebody and just talking about, what your needs are and kind of, like I said, starting the path to being housed, getting resources, learning about what's available, and starting that path to hopefully get, something like a Section 8 voucher, for example.
So do we need someone come talk about that?
So the board had mentioned that in the past.
Yeah, I know.
Bringing that
I'm
in.
not quite sure what we were gonna do with it.
And I know we've had somebody present before, but with the discussion was with, the new board members that we do have that were not part of the previous conversation.
Would that be a good thing to wait until after the first year of some new board members? You're going off the board.
That's up to this group.
I think it'd be a good idea to wait till
Okay.
Yeah.
January, February to find out.
Yeah.
That way the new board members.
Right, you're the only one going off the board, right?
I think so.
I think so.
And so that's why
Okay.
we've identified January. as a
We'll think
possible.
about it then after. There's no problem with that. Vision Zero and Micro Transit in October.
Who's presenting that?
Probably Cammie and Phil. And
Okay, good.
I think I told you, we had them come to Village on Main, and it was great to see people's interest. They had no idea about the microtransit.
So if you want that, that's something that Ronnie could reach out to, and we already started that email chain, but you could formalize that ask and just copy date.
Okay. All right.
October.
I'm gonna skip down to legislative updates here for a second. I had a phone call from Sandy Cedar. She said she's willing to come in anytime, October, November, December, anytime we want her to, and talk about the legislative process. I was thinking maybe December. That's just before the legislature starts. Maybe that would be a good time. What do you think?
So I think it would be nice if we got a before and an after from them.
Oh,
This is what's coming up, and then after the legislature's done, this is what
that's
has
a
passed.
really good idea.
So I think it would be a good idea to get it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's an excellent idea.
She's amazing. She is so
She is.
knowledgeable.
she's very
great.
knowledgeable.
Is that okay with that?
Yeah.
Great idea.
So
Okay.
we'll reach out and then copy Dave for, are you looking at November then? Or December?
December, yes.
December for that?
Just send.
Just
Right
saying,
before the session, then maybe in April or something.
December and then.
Or May.
And racing to get done here. Two areas that I'd like to bring up, and I'd like to have speakers. Mental health and addiction, and employment. And I'll do it if I got the blessing of the group. But mental health and addiction is a major problem in the community. And it's a major problem with older adults. We just don't hear about it that much. But I would like to have a meeting with Brandy and whoever on your staff and others in the community so we have a good grasp of what the issues are in the community, the depth of the problem. So I don't know, for example, what's the scope of the problem in Lowell? What are the resources we have available? Where does the senior center fit in? What are some needs that we might be able to meet with some additional lobbying or proposals to the city council? I don't know any of that stuff. All I know is that there's a problem. And I'd like to have a presentation. And like I say, I'll work with Brandy and whoever else in the community. I don't even know what mental health providers we have in the Longmont. And so all of that stuff's information. I have a feeling that most of you don't know that much about it either.
No, but you've also got Boulder County too.
Yeah, exactly, you've got that
I
part.
got Boulder County.
Yeah.
So I'd like to,
Yeah.
I'll go ahead with, unless, I'll try to get that together for next meeting.
Okay.
Would that be okay? So you can have a
what-
report.
No, you're
You have
doing Vision
Vision Zero
Zero
for
for the next meeting.
Yeah, the
And
October,
then, so that would be
But
November?
just to give
November.
a report on where he's at, he's saying.
Oh, okay.
He'll just have it together by,
that won't take a real long time, I don't think. So the main presentations would be mental health and addiction and,
for the
vision zero
November meeting, right?
at the October meeting.
Yeah. Wait, are
Okay.
you saying to have them come and speak at the October meeting, or just to give us an update on where you're at? Because October's gonna
Actually-
be Vision Zero,
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
and
are
that's
we gonna-
really
are-
important.
Okay, did we decide everybody, we're gonna have Vision Zero and microtransit?
Yeah.
October.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
that's what
I
I wrote
kind of
down.
missed that. Okay, the November,
Mental health and addiction,
yes, it'll be
plenty of time.
November.
yeah, and that might be a good,
Before the holidays.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's
actually-
good.
Yeah, this, just for your information, it's common misperception that suicide is greater around the holidays. It's not. That's not the case. Anyway, we can still have it in November. And then employment of seniors, that's something I would really like to get into, but I don't think we don't need to talk about that right now. I'd just like to have it on the list.
Sure,
Yes,
sounds good.
okay, oh my gosh, it's over 5 minutes. Okay, any other business?
One quick question, I've asked this probably 3 or 4 times, but when do they start opening the positions for the advisory boards?
October is out.
It would be whenever your term,
Okay, my term actually ends in December, but they usually open it a couple of months before, don't they?
Yeah,
Or is
no,
it-
yeah.
yeah,
Somebody has
Ronnie
to
would work
apply
with, yeah, Ronnie would work with the clerk's office.
I'll reach out.
You'll reach out and find out?
Because
Because we're gonna have a couple of positions, right?
Yeah, well, just yours.
No, she was.
No, you've got Sheila.
Oh, right, to replace Sheila, yeah.
Sheila.
Oh, Sheila, yes, of course. Yes. Okay. All right, let's have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Who said that? Arlene? Okay, second, Lonnie? Lonnie? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay.
It's Jen.